whether you're the caregiver or the one in pain, that a lot of times you never made a decision to probably endure the trials that you're going through. You never made a decision in the sense of to say, I want to go through this, right? But your decision right now, even the smallest decision, could be the most important decision of your life. Hello, everybody, and welcome to podcast number 124 of the Gordon and Cherise Show. Thank you for being back with us. We are so excited that you are joining us on your own healing journey. And today's topic, we talked last time about standing, about making a stand. This week, it is about stick with your decision. Folks, Gordon, you have said this to me for most of our marriage, that indecision is making a decision.
Right.
And so I've thought of that so many times when I feel stuck or paralyzed in the ability to make a decision, that in itself is creating a decision to remain frozen. So I think the power of this transformation experience through pain, the power is that you've tapped into the ability that you still have freedom to make decisions in pain. Right?
Absolutely. So let's break this down practically for someone. So here they are. They're standing firm right now. They've assessed everything that's happening around them. And they're like, what do we do next? We stood firm. We're not going to overthink. We're not going to overanalyze. We want to be in a place of peace. We want to have confidence in our faith. We want to, this is a time to renew our mind and maybe make a different option than just remaining in this, as you mentioned, this frozen place or being in this broken loop where new decisions aren't happening and change is not occurring. Most likely, people are still dealing with a lot of racing thoughts in their mind. And they're asking themselves, how do I rebuild my future? How do I get some of my health back? How do I get a home back? How do I get my purpose back? How do I get a career, finances back? How do I live a healthier life? They may have gone through a divorce. How do I have another spouse someday? How do I take care of my kids the right way? There's a lot of things that hit people at once, okay? But a decision has to be made. And I know with us, I tend to make decisions more quickly than you do. And part of it is not to be foolish. It's not that I haven't looked at all the different variables. It's that I've counted on my faith, and I know this. Sometimes making a decision puts you in a position of movement, and you start getting change. But you can start amending the course of where you're going until you really know you're on the right path or the straight path to where you're supposed to go. But a lot of times, remaining stuck in that place of indecision, nothing really happens. All you're basically doing is you're being reactive to the situation around you. Okay, so I would say here's 3 points to consider, and let's just go over these basically, okay? Number one, don't wait for a crisis or have another crisis occur before you decide you need to make changes.
Normally, that just brings about reactionary change instead of deliberate change. And sometimes we have to respond to an emergency, of course.
Sure we do.
But just waiting for crisis doesn't really lend to good decisions because they're usually made out of just reacting.
Well, what happens is we start hiding from ourselves. If I can start becoming a recluse, Or I can quarantine my life within my home and not answer the door anymore. And if I see the phone ring or a text occur and I don't know the phone number, I don't have to answer it. I'm going to throw on a few Netflix movies. I am in pain. I'm not capable of making a decision right now. I stood up and I took my position. Now I decided to go back to bed or get to the couch. And what do I have to eat? And what's the easiest? And how do I navigate through my life without having to touch any sharp objects of crisis?
Without too much difficulty.
Well, what we're doing is we're not even looking at what the meaning of suffering is or crisis is and how it can really help us to become the person we're supposed to be. See, a lot of times when we're overloaded with so many different options and we're looking for so many different options to approve us, to fulfill our lives, to give us the magic bullet, the answer to everything, a lot of times we're trying to satisfy our false self. So as we try to satisfy this false self, we start to become compulsive. And you're not supposed to make your decisions out of being compulsive, but I think a lot of people are dealing with inward compulsion to take care of their wounded flesh.
I was about to say, to me, that compulsiveness, and we've seen it, we've walked through it in our own life.
Hey, we've been part of it.
And it's only because we've walked through it, we acknowledge it. It was like a Band-Aid at one time for us. Being compulsive, maybe buying compulsively, shopping compulsively, those kind of things are there because, somebody in pain is trying so hard to find relief. But my word for the year is restoration. It's not always
Yes, it is.
about finding that quick relief. As you said, compulsion can bring you into a place where you don't even recognize yourself because you might be putting on too many masks of a false self to get through the day.
Right. And when you're dealing with your false self, most likely you're not going to make the right decision. Most likely you're going to make a compulsive decision because that's what's happening the most to yourself. I mean, Henry Nouwen, for instance, and Thomas Merton, love these writers. They write, compulsive is indeed the best adjective for the false self. It points to the need for ongoing and increasing affirmation. In other words, it even drowns out who we really are.
So social media likes, it can drive that too. I just think of that.
Oh, I feel sorry for this generation. A couple generations dealing with technology and social media.
And that knew nothing before that.
No, the bullying, the hardwiring that's occurring to build up the false self.
So you're saying when you stick with the decision, it's not sticking with the decision to add layers of that false nature on. Sticking with the decision is making a good decision for the true self.
Right.
Not the false self.
Right. And that and that true self of who we are, you're going through a refining process with that suffering. So it's burning off all of the things that are not essential. Okay? The non-essentials are being taken and driven from your life. You're almost going through a personal exercise of minimizing, simplifying, looking at things of true value and truth, looking at things that really are important to the soul and the body, different things that are more consistent with your alignment with the power of faith. Okay? So you're doing that. The compulsion that we get, it manifests in this lurking fear of failing. And there's a steady urge to prevent this by gathering more of the same. So if I do start to work, I'm going to work more and more and more and more and more and more and more spend more time doing that so that I don't have to address the other parts of my life that are very important to who we really are in our true nature. Okay? The same thing applies with money. The same thing, excuse me. The same thing applies with more friends. So why don't you speak while I catch my breath here?
You're catching your breath, and you are very vulnerable and honest in the last podcast about this. So as we walk through this, as you're making a decision right now to do this podcast and to keep going, you have a hernia where your stomach is going through your diaphragm, and you're giving us coaching nuggets. That's a pretty good decision to keep going.
Yes, I do feel pressure on my lungs. So
it's kind of hard to talk, but you're going to keep going.
No, and you know, I'm going to say this to folks. Your true self, you can make good decisions in a shorter period of time because you know what the appetite of your soul is, and you hunger and thirst for righteousness, and you want to be on the right path. You have a desire to be in the right place and the right path. You don't sit there and just try every other exercise of thought that happens to pop into your mind, okay, or pop into your brain. You don't allow your body just to take over on what its desires are. You know, the lust, the flesh, the money, the sex, the addictions, the drugs, the alcohol, the pornography, the everything that entices us today. And it's a lot, folks. I recognize it. And when you're in pain and you've dealt with fear and you're trying to hide from everything, you can go to those places. A lot of people do. And they think, hey, listen, no one sees me. But what's happening to you who are there? Are you growing in value? Are you able to make a decision and stick with it, excuse me, and move on to transformation and move closer to God with your life, okay? So the first thing is don't wait for that crisis or another crisis to happen because you think you're able to hide before you make any changes, okay? It's really not going to be effective. The coaching nugget I would give to someone in this place right now is this: live a preparatory lifestyle of your true self. Every day is about preparation. We're being tested and prepped and grounded for an eternal existence. Now think about that, folks. That's forever. And the trials you're dealing with pain and disappointment and self-pity and lack of finances and purpose and identity, this is short term. Why don't we put our eyes on things where good decisions are made? Okay? We don't want to become more addictive and reactionary to painful stimuli. We want to both grow in our humanity and our inner parts that share in the divinity with God. We want to grow in those aspects. So keep preparing for a prepared lifestyle. And that's what we do. Keep preparing. Okay? All right. Number 2. You want to read that one, Cherise?
Small changes are the most effective ways to rebuild your life from the ground up and inside out. Small changes. And I would say that is so true, Gordon, because I find that just doing one thing, you know, if you can't do 10 things differently right now, if you can't make a decision on 10 things to do differently, what if you make a decision to do one thing differently every day? It turns the dial just a little bit. It changes the trajectory of your life just a little bit. For me, for instance, you know, I made a decision in my morning routine a long time ago. I'm just going to camp with God for a little while in the morning. And I'm going to do what he puts on my heart as far as praying or reading or writing. I'm not going to do this religiously or out of guilt. It's just that, hey, I'm in a relationship with God himself. And I want to make one small change in my routine to put down my social media and my phone to validate who I am in the morning when I wake up. I want to put that down and I want to pick up the word.
Well, you've been doing that for years. And I think for a lot of people, they know the places they have to make changes. But there's a lot of people that also avoid making those small changes to the areas they need to make changes.
But what I've seen in my life, that small change is the biggest change I could have ever made, because then it changes my thought life for the entire day. When I fall away, when I don't exist in love, when I cut love off of me in the sense of I'm running away from God, I can sense it faster and I can get back into the center quicker because of that small change.
Right.
And I think there's very practical small steps that are not just spiritual ones, but that one for me is an example, I think, of a small change.
I know for me, at different times, and I'm good at being disciplined at making a change when I make a decision about something.
Oh yeah.
Okay. But a lot of times I'll almost have this list written on a Post-it note, and I'll have 6 or 7 things down, and then I'm even writing down, make a list the next day to revise the list that I've had. Okay, what small changes do I need to make? And I write everything out as if I'm confessing something and I'm wanting a clean slate. I would encourage you, the area that you know you need to make a change in, make the small change there. Don't start going after 6 or 7 different points of making changes that aren't going to affect the deepest parts of who you are, because that small change you make, that decision you make, and to stick with that small change, it's hard. It's hard. But once you get past the first week, once you get past the second week, it's part of your rhythm.
You're opening up brand new neural pathways in your brain.
That's right.
You're not just saying, I'm going to go buy old loops, but I'm opening up a brand new space, even if it's small, even if it starts, a baby neuron in your brain. When you wake up, you have brand new cells in your brain. They're babies, but they grow. So I wouldn't despise the day of small beginnings, of small changes, of a small thing. And you're right, stick with the thing that's probably the most obvious, like the thing you know that you need to change first is the thing to work on. And avoiding that and going to 10 other things is not going to really help you with the thing right in front of you.
That's right. And I know that that magic word, neuroplasticity, that is real, folks. And you start to see that on so many different podcasts, and it's see it
so
from
good.
Yeah, it's a great word. You see it from neuroscientists, and
I've heard that we live in the age of neuroplasticity. And I think that it's true.
I do too.
Because so now science is backing up what we already know by faith.
Right.
By faith, we can change our mind. By faith, our mind can be made new. Then the brain follows, because the brain is different. As Dr. Carolyn Leaf says, the brain and the mind are separate. But it's really interesting how the brain adapts to change. The brain even is stimulated by change. And it stimulates itself to make new pathways. We don't have to live by the old. That's the mystery of faith working itself out in us.
Well, neuroplasticity is another form of breaking shackles. And that's why it says in Romans 12:1 and 2, it really addresses renewing your mind.
Absolutely.
That's how you become part of transformation, folks. And so now we're coming up with the scientific terms to explain what's really been in the ancient scriptures for years, the truth that's life-giving and powerful. Renew your mind, and that's what breaks shackles. Now, here's one thing that I know people in pain are struggling with. They're shackled with pain. And they're saying, I'm trying to make a small change, but I'm carrying around a ball and chain of pain. Okay. How do I move forward? And their mind then wanders into that place where they're wondering what their life is going to be like. And then how do they pay the debts of their pain?
Yeah.
And who do they pay them to?
Gosh.
Okay. So the message is this: when you're making these small changes, you're essentially choosing life-giving, renewing of the mind, power of grace, power of God. When
Totally.
you choose God to
Yes.
live in Him, guess what? You do not have to be indebted to your pain.
In fact, you realize that you can't even pay the debt of your
Right.
pain.
Right.
Because if you pay the debt, you're going to die. It leads to death.
That's right.
But one paid the debt. So I think it's learning the mystery of being in a relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ,
Right.
who daily bears the pain that you're bearing alongside of you, praying for you, being with you in suffering because he is familiar with our sufferings.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Let's move to number 3. This is good stuff. And I know the people that are listening, that they're identifying this with making decisions, sticking with the decisions, growing in their true self, making small changes. I like this next one, number 3. The more you grow in faith, the more familiar you'll become amongst your unfamiliar place of displacement.
Yes.
So sometimes making that small change on an area in our life that needs to change, we might not know the final outcome. We might have an idea or a vision of, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if this change rendered this result or outcome? Wouldn't it be nice? But we might not be familiar with all the things that happen between point A to point B. But the more you grow in your faith, the more you trust in God, the more you grow in that decision that you've stuck with and you've got that perseverance and you've applied discipline to your life, okay, you're going to become more familiar to things that you're unfamiliar with.
I think even if it's not familiar with the things of the unfamiliar, you'll become accepting of it, that you don't have to know it all in that space.
Well, that relates to the nugget that I wrote, a coaching nugget about this. The more you grow in your faith, the less angry you will become with your pain.
Yeah.
And that's how you get one step ahead of your pain. Because the more you grow in familiarity with the unfamiliar, the less fear you have, the less anger and hostility comes out because you were not familiar with what's going on. And you start to discover that unfamiliar things that are happening are part of you becoming new. You're becoming new in change.
That's right.
Okay. And then when
Yes.
the more, and no one starts out at 100% by giving their all in all to God. It's a sanctifying process where he grows us in part of our unfamiliar parts that he has, his divine
Yes.
nature. Okay. As we grow more and more in those, we start growing more and more in love and confidence in our faith and the way we handle ourselves with other people. Decisions become more solid. They become the foundation of who we are. We're constantly making choices, understanding that Christ gave us freedom. It is for freedom that he's here, folks.
And that he set us free.
He set us free.
Pain doesn't have to be the ball and chain to keep you bound to indecision.
Right.
And Gordon, you and I, through the course of our marriage, we have learned this valuable lesson that we can't wait for pain to go away to make a good decision. Or you would have never made a decision ever in the course of our marriage. And so I've seen God work through you by the renewing of your mind, by giving you confidence to say, I can still make a good decision today, even though I have pain. I'm going to make a good decision. I'm going to make a life-giving decision. I'm going to make a decision to live today. I'm going to make a decision to love today. I'm going to make a decision to forgive myself today. I'm going to make a decision to be curious about what God has for me in this journey, though it's dark and hard. We're going to get through it.
We are going to get through it.
And there is a good decision that can be made. And there's something you wrote down that I want to emphasize because I know you skipped it over because we've talked about so many other things. But I want to encourage the person who is just mustering up the courage to make a decision. Don't fear that if you make one good decision, then everything bad is going to happen to you. Don't create this superstitious mindset, this if-then mindset. Don't look for bad things to happen once you make a good decision. Things can happen. Life is life, and life is messy. Momentum is messy.
And
Thank you, John Acuff, for that affirmation. It's true. Momentum is messy.
Momentum is messy.
But I would say this. Don't be bound by this if-then. Okay, if I make this move, then I'm going to get clobbered. Be bold in your pain to step up, stand, and then make a decision.
And I think we also have to look at this, Cherise, and I'm not trying to bash anyone who might be a big karma believer. Okay, if I do good, then something good will happen to me from the universe. Well, Cherise, we're good people. And sometimes all we get back sometimes is pain.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, it does not add up.
It doesn't. I mean,
and it goes into the mystery of people's mindsets and their curiosity that becomes suspicions of why would God allow bad things to happen to good people?
Or what did you do to
deserve this?
Yes.
What sin are you committing? And then there's almost this karma lifestyle of karma is the way to think. Okay. But it doesn't fit what you Christians are going through,
right?
Where you're dealing with all this suffering. That's not the meaning behind suffering. And suffering is about growing in spiritual maturity when you're making your decisions.
I think that the danger of that thinking, I mean, there is something very parallel in Scripture about reaping and sowing. But when you become the beginning and the end of the object, when everything you do is based on you.
Right.
There is no other consequence. There's nothing beyond that but you.
Right.
Then you're stuck with you.
Right.
And there's something, I think that the point is, it's not about bashing. It's about saying there's something so much bigger at work in your life than that, because God is so much bigger. His plans are so much more powerful and mysterious and beautiful and eternal.
We can't comprehend them.
We can't. So if bad things happen to good people, I mean, I think we can go through historical context of that. We can go through discussions of Holocaust or wars that are currently happening. Good people can endure bad things. It doesn't mean that they're off. It means that life is messy. Mm-hmm. But you can make a good decision in that mess.
Yes, you can. Now, we have the tech guys giving us the 2-minute deal.
You just got me so fired up. I feel like I'm just beginning.
Well, this is the way I like to see you sometimes. You're a little feisty. This is good. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to go beyond it, tech guys. Mm-hmm. You're not stopping us. We might do 5 more minutes.
Oh, no.
Okay?
Wow.
Because what I want to say with decision making, and this is so important, perspective is powerful. Mm-hmm. Okay? Even when you feel like your life is stolen and taken from you, you can make changes based on perspective. And as we've talked about making decisions and sticking with them, and we got off on some side tracks, I want to get back on the main track right now. I would say this. Look at your pain and how you might possibly live your life differently. That's what Gordon Sully did. Because my pain wouldn't stop. My loop was there, folks. I was in it. And I know you're in it right now. And my spiritual questioning of doubt regarding even the full truth of the scripture, I had to go back and literally read every word of the Bible to walk in full belief instead of being in a place of disbelief. Pain wore me down. But here's the deal. You can look at your pain and imagine, how might I possibly live out my life differently? Okay, so when you're left with shattered pieces, in terms of becoming a broken individual, your life does not have to reflect a hopeless existence in the future. Embrace your true self. Allow the dead skin of your false self to drop off your backside. So as that furnace is hitting you, every part of your life, and you think you're ruined and nothing's left, and you're still holding on to the skin, the dead parts of you, get rid of the dead parts, folks. Don't satisfy the false self. I don't care if you peel them off. It's like getting a sunburn. Get the dead parts off of you and embrace your true self and start looking at pain differently.
Yes.
Discover its meaning and start moving on how you're going to live out your life differently.
Beautiful.
Number 2, and we said this before, do not bring your past successes as an expectation into where you are now.
I think it's great that you didn't say failures, but successes.
Right. See, we grieve when we get a lot of pain that destroys our life. It's almost like someone came by as we're building a Lego set, as a child builds a Lego set, someone comes by and kicks it over.
We watched that with our grandchildren.
We did watch that with our grandchildren in Australia, okay? And then all of a sudden, everything that was built up successfully and creatively and took hard work and was tedious was knocked over. And that feeling, that jolt, that what did you do to me, okay? We tend to do, that's what pain does when it hits us like a tsunami, when we're wiped out. And then what happens is, the worst thing you can do is to say, I'm going to take that familiar part of what it was like to have those successes. And I know that has to be the major component of what the solution is for my future. That has to happen. And I'm bringing it with me somehow, even though the Lego set got knocked over. Somehow I'm going to rebuild it in pain. And by the way, it's not working anymore.
Right.
But I want that in my present, and that has to be part of my future to be part of the good life. We are guilty of that at times. We are guilty of that in dreams. The dreams that we believe that God's putting on us, the vision that he has for us, the purpose as he takes us further on the journey. We have to remember, hey, listen, even though we can be crushed by painful suffering, we can't bring our Egypt into the promised land.
Yep.
We have to walk with that true self.
That's good, Gordon.
Okay? So let's do a valuable takeaway and we'll finish for today.
I want to encourage everybody that's listening, whether you're the caregiver or the one in pain, that a lot of times you never made a decision to probably endure the trials that you're going through. You never made a decision in the sense of to say, I want to go through this, right? But your decision right now, even the smallest decision, could be the most important decision of your life.
Yes.
Listen to your inner voice, not the inner critic, the inner voice that is full of love. That inner voice comes from God, the one that is giving you light for the journey and hope for the path ahead. You, by God's grace and his gifting and his glory, will give you the power to make a good decision. And stick with it, folks. Stick with a good decision. Make just one today. Make one good decision. Stick with it. Do that for 63 days. Just stick with something. Keep going. Make a good decision. Let God's love shine through the circumstance that you're in, no matter how dark it is.
Very good. I would say this. New thoughts give birth to a new vision. sometimes the whole vision is not put in front of us. And those new thoughts, as they're giving birth to a new decision, those new thoughts can't just remain as thoughts. You have to add action to them.
Yes.
Use those small steps of change, one at a time. And you're going to see how the vision grows in your life. And when you actually live out your faith with a renewed mindset and follow your newly discovered vision by faith, you're beginning the work that is in that in-between space, that valley, the what life is about.
Yeah.
What's down in the valley as well as what's on top of the mountaintop. Okay? And this whole thing deals with this. It's not about our control of what we have on the future. Really is, those changes will move us into a posture of returning to God.
Yes.
Returning to Him. He's the springs of living water.
That's right.
Okay? And there's a lot of great rebirth that comes out of that. There's a lot of great new becoming familiar with unfamiliar things.
So good, Gordon.
Okay? So that's it for today. Get a hold of us by doing what, Cherise?
Go to gordonandcherise.com. Go to our website. Everything you need, the memberships to be a part of our community, the extra courses, the bonuses, the Facebook, getting on all of our platform sources are available at that website. And I would encourage you, get there and then get everything else and stay on that healing journey. We're on it with you.
Yes, we are.
So we're not the answer. We're walking forward knowing that God has these answers, and we're going to make good decisions to follow Him today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you next week.
We'll see you then.